Vortex is You by Sean Helgerson. Section 1, The Problem. I want to talk about the vortex, not because it's a new concept, not because nobody's covered it before, but because I keep watching people talk about it and I keep seeing them get it wrong in a way that is actually costing them years of their lives. Here's the version you've probably heard. You have desires. When you experience contrasts, when life shows you something you don't want, you launch what Abraham Hicks calls a rocket of desire. That rocket flies off into a higher dimension, into a vortex, which is this kind of cosmic holding tank where everything you've ever wanted is just sitting there, fully assembled, waiting for you. And your job, the whole spiritual practice, is to lower your resistance enough that those things can start sliding from the vortex into your 3D physical reality. And look, I'm not saying Abraham Hicks is wrong. I'm actually saying the opposite. I think the insight underneath that teaching is one of the most important things you could ever understand about how your life works. If you've spent any time in manifestation or law of attraction spaces, you've almost certainly encountered Abraham Hicks. For those who haven't, Abraham Hicks is a teacher and author who has been channeling a collective consciousness she calls Abraham since the mid-1980s. The teachings of Abraham have shaped the entire modern manifestation movement. Books like Ask and It Is Given and The Vortex have sold millions of copies. If you've ever heard someone talk about raising your vibration, rockets of desire, or getting into alignment, that language almost certainly traces back to Abraham Hicks. And I want to be clear, I'm not here to tear any of that down. The core insight in Abraham's teaching is real, and it's powerful, and it's genuinely changed lives, including mine. But I'll be honest with you, the standard explanation of the vortex never made sense to me. The idea of a cosmic holding tank in another dimension where all my desires are sitting, waiting for me to vibrate correctly so they can slide into my physical reality. I couldn't make that work in a way that actually changed anything. So what I'm sharing with you today is how I've come to understand the vortex, my own translation of a real principle, and more importantly, how applying it this way has started to produce genuinely different results in my life. But the way most people are applying it, it's making them passive. It's making them wait. And I've watched people spend years, genuinely beautiful, capable, gifted people, meditating their way through their best opportunities because they were waiting for the vortex to deliver something. And I get why that's appealing. It's comforting. It means everything is already handled. You just have to get out of the way. That's not how it works. And once I show you what the vortex actually is, you'll understand why. Section 2. What the vortex actually is. The vortex is not out there somewhere. The vortex is you. Not metaphorically, not some kind of spiritual poetry. Literally, you are the vortex. Right now, in this moment, you are a vortex that is spinning. Here's what I mean. You are an information processing system. That's not a reductive statement. That's actually an extraordinary one. You take information in through your senses, through your relationships, through everything you read and watch and experience. You process that information through your body, your nervous system, your beliefs, your memories, your emotional state. And then you put information back out through your words, your decisions, your attention, your behavior, and your energy in the room. Input, processing, output. That's the vortex. That's the whole mechanism. And it is spinning all the time, whether you're thinking about it or not. Now, I want you to picture something. If you've ever seen a diagram of Earth's magnetic field, or a toroidal field, which is what the Heart Math Institute uses to describe the electromagnetic field generated by your own heart, you already know the shape I'm talking about. Energy flows out from the center, arcs outward in every direction, curves back around, and feeds back into itself. It's a continuous loop. It's self-sustaining. And the shape of it, that donut, that torus, is one of the most fundamental shapes in nature. It shows up in magnetic fields, in the structure of galaxies, in the field around your own heart, in the field your own heart generates that extends several feet outside your body. I want to use that as an image, but I also want to be clear about something, because this is where it's easy to misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not telling you that the vortex is the toroidal field around your body. That field is real, it's measurable, but it's the interface. It's the intermediate point where you meet the larger information environment around you. Think of it as your antenna. The vortex I'm describing is something bigger. It's the same pattern, that same continuous loop of output becoming input, becoming output again, scaled out across time, across your whole life, across every interaction, every relationship, every room you've ever walked into, and every idea you've ever had. And here's what makes that staggering. Most of it is happening below the level of your conscious awareness. You've probably heard some version of this statistic, that your subconscious mind is taking in something in the range of 1 trillion bits of data at any given moment, while your conscious mind is only processing somewhere around 1,000. Think about that gap. Your subconscious is registering the temperature of the room, the micro expressions on someone's face, the pattern in what your boss says versus what he doesn't say, the subtle shift in the energy when you walk into a space where something is off, all of it, constantly. And your conscious mind gets 1,000 bits, highly real, heavily edited summary. So what decides what makes the cut? What determines which 1,000 bits your conscious mind gets to work with? Your identity, your emotional state, your sense of what's relevant to who you are and what you're doing here. Your subconscious isn't random. It's filtering based on a signal, and that signal is you, what you believe about yourself, what you believe is possible, what you believe you deserve. It's filtering the 1 trillion bits down to the 1,000 that match that signal and handing those to your conscious mind to act on. Which means the $1 million business idea might not be in another dimension somewhere. It might be in the room with you right now, as information in your subconscious has already registered and filtered out because your current identity said, that's not for me. That's not the kind of thing that happens to someone like me. Now, when Abraham talks about a higher dimension where your desires exist, I don't think that's wrong. I just think the dimension they're pointing at isn't one we already know about. It's time. The fourth dimension is time. And what exists there isn't a cosmic warehouse. It's probability, the unfolding of possible futures based on the information your system is currently outputting. If you change nothing, if your outputs stay exactly the same, then the probability distribution of what your life looks like in 5 years is pretty predictable. The same patterns tend to produce the same results. But the moment you change the information you're putting in, the way you show up, the decisions you make, the things you say yes and no to, the identity you're operating from, you shift the probability. You change which future becomes likely and which one fades. That's what it means for something to exist in the vortex. It exists as a probable future. It exists as information your system hasn't surfaced yet because the filter hasn't been set to find it. The question was never, how do I get the vortex to deliver? The question is, what is my vortex? What am I? And am I outputting in alignment with that? That's a completely different question, and it requires a completely different practice. Section 2B. You're already doing this. Now here's the thing that I really want you to sit with for a moment. Because when I say you are a being who manipulates time and probability, I know how that sounds. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. It sounds like something you have to earn or develop or meditate your way into, but you already do it. every single day. You've been doing it your whole life. Think about this. You set an alarm last night because you had somewhere to be this morning. You manipulated time. You looked at your future self, the version of you that doesn't exist yet. You made a decision in the present that changed what that future version of you would experience. That's not a small thing. That is a genuinely extraordinary capacity that no other creature on Earth has in the way you have it. That's manipulation of the fourth dimension. That's you working time like a material. And it goes further than that. Have you ever changed someone's mind? Have you ever had a conversation that shifted the direction of someone's life? Maybe without even knowing it. Have you ever written something or said something or shown up for someone in a way that altered their trajectory? Then you've reached across into another person's decision space and changed what was probable for them. You've operated beyond your own timeline and into theirs. You do it constantly. You do it so naturally, so automatically, that you don't even register it as remarkable. But here's what that means for the vortex. If you are already, right now, today, without any special training or spiritual development, manipulating time, probability, and the decision fields of other people, then the question was never whether you have the capacity to work with your vortex intentionally. You always have the capacity. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, whether you're doing it by default or by design. Most people are doing it by default, running patterns they inherited, outputting information that matches their fears instead of their identity, manipulating probability in the direction of more of the same. The practice, the whole practice, is just becoming conscious of what you're already doing, and then doing it on purpose. Section 3, the tilt of the wheel. So now you understand what the vortex is. You are an information processing system operating across time, constantly taking in and putting out, manipulating probability in every direction, whether you're aware of it or not. But here's the question that naturally follows. If I'm already doing this, if the vortex is already spinning, why isn't it producing what I want? The answer is the tilt. I want you to imagine a gyroscope, one of those spinning tops that seem to defy gravity when they're running at full speed. When a gyroscope is spinning in balance, when it's on its true axis, it maintains its orientation with almost no effort. It goes where you point it. It's stable. It's responsive. It does exactly what it's designed to do. But tilt it, disturb its axis, and something changes. It starts to drift. It starts to precess. It wobbles in a direction you didn't intend. And the harder you try to point it somewhere, the more the tilt works against you. Your body is that gyroscope, and your emotional state is the tilt. When you're running on fear, when you feel unworthy, disconnected, exhausted, unloved, not enough, the information coming through your system gets processed through that tilt. Every piece of data your subconscious surfaces to your conscious mind gets colored by it. And so the outputs you generate, the words you choose, the opportunities you recognize or don't recognize, the actions you take, the way you show up in a room, they all reflect that tilt. This is why you can have an extraordinary idea, a genuinely world-changing idea, and watch it die. Not because you weren't smart enough or ready enough, but because the vortex that was supposed to bring it to life was tilted. It was processing that idea through unworthiness, through fear, through who am I to think I can pull this off? And so instead of producing outputs that move toward the idea, it produces outputs that confirm the fear. And the feedback loop runs in the wrong direction. Now, this is where Abraham Hicks has been right all along. Feel good. That is not optional. But I want you to understand why in a way that actually changes how you approach it. Feeling good isn't a signal you send to the universe so it knows to start delivering. Feeling good straightens the wheel. It returns you to your true axis. It clears the filter so that the information your subconscious is already collecting, the opportunities, the connections, the ideas that are already in the room with you, can actually make it through to your conscious mind. You don't feel good to attract things. You feel good so your vortex can process clearly. And here's what changes when the wheel straightens. You start noticing things you walked past 100 times before. Doors that were always open start to look like doors. People you already knew start to seem like exactly the right person for exactly the right conversation. Not because the universe rearranged itself, because your filter changed. Because your vortex is finally processing in alignment with your identity instead of your fear. That's the tilt of the wheel. That's why emotions matter. Not because they're signals to the cosmos, but because they determine the quality of everything your system produces. Section 3B, Mimetic Momentum. Now, I want to talk about something that the manifestation community almost never talks about honestly. And I think the absence of this conversation has left a lot of people feeling quietly broken. Here's what you've probably been told. Change your vibration. Shift your energy. Get into alignment. And then watch your life begin to transform. And maybe it worked for someone you know. Maybe you've seen the testimonials. Maybe you've experienced small shifts yourself that gave you hope. But then you did the work. You meditated, you journaled, you did the gratitude lists, you tried to feel good. And weeks later, months later, your life looked pretty much the same. And the conclusion you drew, because it was the only conclusion the framework offered you, was that you must be doing something wrong. That your resistance is too high. That you're not aligned enough. That there's something in you that's blocking the flow. I want to offer you a different explanation. Your vortex has mass. Not physical mass, but something I think of as mimetic momentum. The accumulated weight of every belief you've ever reinforced, every identity story you've ever told yourself, every pattern you've run, every relationship that has confirmed what you think you're worth, every decision that has added another layer to the spinning wheel of who you are and how you move through the world. Here's the image I want you to hold. Imagine a small shopping cart wheel spinning on a table. You can stop that wheel with one finger. You can change its direction almost instantly. There's no resistance worth mentioning. Now, imagine a tractor tire. Massive, heavy, spinning fast. Try to change the direction of that with one finger. You'll lose the finger. Changing the direction of that tire requires sustained force applied consistently over time. It doesn't mean the tire is broken. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're working with something that has mass and momentum, and those things are governed by laws that don't care about your intention. Your personal vortex is that spinning wheel. And the older you are, the longer you've been running the same patterns, the more mass that wheel has accumulated. This is why younger people can sometimes turn their lives around in a matter of weeks. It's not because they're more spiritually gifted. It's not because they have less resistance in some mystical sense. It's because their wheel is smaller and lighter. It turns more easily. There's less accumulated momentum to overcome. And this is why someone who has spent 40 or 50 years building a particular version of themselves, a particular set of beliefs about what's possible, what they deserve, who they are, can do everything right and still feel like nothing is moving. It's not because the principle doesn't work. It's because you're moving a tractor tire, and the tractor tires don't turn on a dime. So what do you do with a tractor tire? You don't try to stop it suddenly and spin it the other way. That doesn't work with tractor tires, and it doesn't work with human beings. What you do is apply consistent force in a new direction. Not dramatic, not overnight, consistent. You change the outputs. One decision, one conversation, one act of embodying your true identity at a time, and the wheel begins, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, to shift. And here's what's remarkable about momentum. It works both ways. The same mass that makes it hard to change direction is the thing that makes it unstoppable once it's moving the right way. A shopping cart loses momentum easily. A tractor tire, once it's rolling in the right direction, will keep rolling long after you've stopped pushing. That's not a consolation prize. That's the actual promise. So if you've been doing the work and feeling like nothing is moving, you're probably not broken. You're probably just moving a very large tire. Keep pushing. Apply force consistently in a direction of your true identity. And trust the momentum that's building even when you can't see it yet. Section 4. Imagination and the image of God. I want to go somewhere now that might surprise you, because I think the deepest explanation for why any of this works, the vortex, the momentum, the ability to reach across time and probability and change when it unfolds, doesn't come from quantum physics or neuroscience or manifestation coaching. It comes from Genesis. In the beginning, God created. That's the first thing we're told about the nature of God. Not that God is loving, though he is. Not that God is just, though he is. The first thing, the foundational characteristic, God creates. God imagines something that doesn't exist and brings it into being. And then, in that same story, just a few verses later, God creates humanity. And the text says something extraordinary. He creates us in his image. The imago Dei, the image of God. People have debated for centuries what that means. What is the thing in us that reflects the divine? What is the quality we carry that makes us image bearers? And I want to suggest to you that it's this: imagination. The capacity to hold in mind something that does not yet exist in physical reality and relate to it as though it's already real. No other creature does this the way we do. Your dog doesn't lie awake at night imagining his future. The tree in your yard isn't picturing what it will look like in 10 years. The red-winged blackbird building its nest is following an encoded program. Extraordinary in its own right, but it isn't imagining a different kind of nest. It isn't picturing a life it hasn't lived yet and reaching towards it. Only we do this. Neville Goddard spent his entire career pointing at this. He called it the imaginal act. The imagination, he said, is not where you go to daydream or escape reality. It's the creative faculty. It's the thing that makes you a co-creator rather than a creature. When you imagine something with genuine conviction, when you don't just picture it, but inhabit it, feel it from the inside, speak and act from the assumption that it's already real, you've done something that changes the output of your system. You've changed the direction of your vortex. And here's where it connects to everything we've been talking about. Remember the subconscious filter? The mechanism that decides which 1,000 bits of the trillion available bits make it to your conscious mind? Imagination is how you reprogram that filter. When you inhabit a future reality in your imagination with enough consistency and conviction, your subconscious begins to treat it as reality. It begins to surface information that matches it. Opportunities that were always there start appearing. Connections that were always available start feeling significant. The door that was always open starts to look like a door. You're not conjuring things from nothing. You're changing what your system recognizes as worth your attention. That's not magic. That's the Imago Dei doing what it was designed to do. The vortex responds to imagination because imagination is how you declare identity. It's how you tell your system and the probability field around you what you are and what you're reaching toward. And that sets us up for the most important piece of all of this, because there's a specific kind of imagination that changes everything. It's not visualization. It's not vision boards. It's something much older and much more precise. It's the mustard seed. Section 5, the mustard seed. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. You could hold 1,000 of them in your palm and barely feel their weight. There's nothing impressive about it. Nothing that announces what it's capable of. If you didn't know what it was, you might sweep it off the table without a second thought. But inside that seed, encoded in its DNA, written into its very nature before a single root has pushed into the soil, is the mustard plant. The root system that will reach outward for water and nutrition, the sprout that will push towards the light, the branches that will grow large enough for birds to come and nest in them. All of it is already there. Not as a hope, not as a potential that might or might not be realized depending on circumstances, as an identity, as what this seed fundamentally and irreducibly is. The seed doesn't know it might become a plant someday. The seed doesn't hope it will. The seed doesn't visualize the plant or repeat affirmations about becoming a plant. The seed is a mustard plant. That's its nature. That's its declaration. And the whole cosmos responds to that declaration because identity is the signal the cosmos reads. That's the 0 point of the vortex. Not your vision board, not your morning routine, not your vibration on a particularly good day, your identity. What you actually are at the level of the seed. The declaration that exists before any evidence appears on the timeline. Now, I want to be careful here, because this is where a lot of teaching goes sideways. People here declare your identity, and they turn it into affirmations. They stand in front of the mirror and say, I am wealthy, while everything in their life is screaming the opposite, and nothing changes. And they conclude that the principle doesn't work. But that's not what the mustard seed is doing. The mustard seed isn't performing. It's not convincing itself of something it secretly doubts. It simply is what it is. There's no gap between the declaration and the reality because the declaration is the reality at the level of identity before it's visible on the timeline. So the work, the real work, is not finding the right affirmation. It's doing the deep excavation required to find out what you actually are. What is true about you at the level of the seed? Not what you wish you were, not what you're performing, what you genuinely, irreducibly are when you strip away the fear and the noise and the accumulated weight of other people's opinions about what's possible for someone like you. I'll tell you what I found when I did that work for myself. I am a person who takes complex ideas and makes them accessible to regular people. That's not something I'm working toward. That's not an aspiration. That's what I am. I've spent years stripping away the noise to get down to that truth. And when I got there, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment. It was more like, oh, of course, that's always been true. And because that's what I am, because that's the identity I operate from, I am a New York Times bestselling author. Not someday, not hopefully, not if everything goes right. I am that. The seed already contains the plant. The timeline just hasn't caught up yet. Now, I want to be clear about something because I know how that sounds. This is not arrogance. This is not delusional thinking. This is not me ignoring reality in favor of fantasy. I can't show you the list, not yet, but that's not the seed's concern. The mustard seed doesn't wait to become a mustard plant before it starts acting like one. It doesn't put its growth on hold until it can see the branches. It just is what it is and does what it does and trusts that the cosmos will respond to its identity the way the cosmos always responds to identity. And here's what that posture actually produces in practical terms. When I know what I am, I don't write to impress people. I don't write from fear of being wrong or in need of approval or anxiety about whether this is good enough. I write from the truth of what I see, the way someone who is that kind of writer writes. I think at the level that identity requires. I hold myself to the standard that identity demands, not as performance, as nature, as what the seed does because it's a seed. And that changes everything about the output, which changes the feedback loop, which changes what the vortex produces over time. There's one more thing about the mustard seed that I don't want to skip past. Jesus didn't just say the seed becomes a plant. He said the birds come and nest in its branches. The thing you become, the identity you grow into, doesn't just serve you. It becomes a place where other things can land, where other people can find shelter, where life that has nothing directly to do with you gets to happen because you became what you were. The mustard seed doesn't know about the birds. It doesn't need to. Its job is to be what it is. And the birds take care of themselves. Section 6, the payoff. So, let me bring it all the way home. The vortex is you. It's not a cosmic holding tank in another dimension. It's not a delivery system waiting for you to vibrate correctly before it releases your order. It's you. Your information processing system, your decision space, your toroidal field of input and output spinning continuously across time, manipulating probability in every direction, whether you're conscious of it or not. And it's been you this entire time. Every desire you've ever launched wasn't flying off somewhere to wait for you. It was folding back into your own system, becoming part of what spins, shaping your filter, influencing what your subconscious surfaces and what it discards, working on you from the inside, even when you couldn't feel it moving. The vortex was never broken. It was never blocked. It was never withholding. It was doing exactly what it does, processing and outputting based on the identity and emotional state and accumulated momentum you brought to it. Faithfully, consistently, without judgment. Which means the question was never, how do I get the universe to cooperate? The question was always, what am I outputting and does it match what I actually am? So here's what changes when you really understand this. And I mean, really understand it. Not as an interesting idea, but as a truth you felt all the way down into your bones. You stop waiting. The passive version, meditate until things arise, raise your vibration until the universe delivers, get into alignment and let the vortex drop your desires into your lap, that's over. Not because meditation is wrong or because feeling good doesn't matter. Those things matter enormously, but they're maintenance. They're how you straighten the wheel so your vortex can process cleanly. The actual work is the output. What you do, what you say, what you build, what you put into the world every single day. You stop waiting and you start being. And there's a difference, a profound difference between hoping you're a certain kind of person and knowing you are. Hope keeps the outcome at arm's length. Identity pulls it into the present. The mustard seed doesn't hope to become a plant. It is one. And that single shift from hoping to being changes everything about what your vortex produces. You stop outsourcing the miracle. The vortex isn't something happening to you from the outside. It's you happening. It's the Imago Dei doing what it was designed to do. Imagining forward, declaring identity, reaching across time and probability and other people's decision spaces, manipulating the fourth and fifth dimensions the way you manipulate the furniture in your living room. Naturally, constantly. Because that's what you are. God didn't make you an audience to your own life. He made you in His image, with the imagination of a creator. The capacity to declare, I am, and have the cosmos reorganized around that declaration. That's not a spiritual achievement you have to earn. That's your inheritance. That's what you already are. And you stop being surprised when it's hard. Because now you understand momentum. You understand that the size of the tire determines the length of the work. You understand that the person who has spent decades spinning in a particular direction isn't broken or unaligned or too resistant. They're moving mass. And moving mass requires sustained force applied consistently in a direction of your true identity. One output at a time, one decision at a time, one act of being the seed at a time. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens. It has to happen because identity, fully committed to and consistently expressed, always grows towards what it is. That's not a promise I'm making. That's just what seeds do. So, here's what I want to leave you with. Find the seed. Do the work to get down to what you actually are, beneath the noise and the fear and the momentum of old patterns. Declare it. Not just as performance, not as affirmation, as nature, as the simple, unadorned truth of what you are before the timeline is caught up. Straighten the wheel. Feel good not because the universe is listening, but because your vortex processes better when you're on your true axis. Because the filter clears. Because what was always available starts becoming visible. Change the outputs. Be the thing you are in every decision, every conversation, every act of showing up. Not perfectly, not all at once, consistently, with the patience of someone who understands that tractor tires turn slowly. And that's not a flaw in the design. And then, trust the momentum. Because the same mass that made it hard to change direction is the same that will make it unstoppable once it's moving the right way. The vortex is you. It always has been.